Hi, this is Adi, and today I've got a review on something which this time I've doubled up on, and that's the Takara Tomy Masterpiece MP-21 Bumblebee. Comparing the box sizes, it is the same size as all the other MP cars. The figure inside is much smaller, but it does display well in the box with the group. Inside the clamshell, Bumblebee doesn't actually take up the majority of space, so we've got him off to one side here, and the big empty region here is taken up by, I think, Daniel. It looks like Daniel to me, in the Exosuit. Putting Bumblebee out on my table like this, the very first thing that I noticed, besides how good it looks, is the yellow is very deep. It doesn't really show up on camera like it does to the naked eye here. It's almost orange in person, and far more orange than any other Bumblebee that I've got. Putting it next to an original Classics Bumblebee, you can see that this guy is very, very yellow, and this one is definitely not. I mean, this looks more like G1 Bumblebee to me. This does not. I can't show my G1 Bumblebee. I've actually been selling off a lot of my G1 stuff, and Bumblebee is gone, so I cannot show him for comparison. I do have this guy, who I'll show later, but you can see just the tone of his yellow is definitely more yellow than this orangey colour. For size comparisons in vehicle mode, I put him next to my favourite MP car, which is Smokescreen. Much smaller than Smokescreen. I'm not a car expert, I don't know if they're in scale. I suspect that the car modes are not in scale to each other, and that it's the robot mode scale that they went for in this case. But I've never actually seen this original Volkswagen Beetle in person, so I can't say for sure. Going over some of the details in my hand, he has nice painted hubcaps on his wheels. The wheels are a little bit flimsy. They have a tendency to push over like this if you move the toy around too much. They don't really lock in, it's mainly just friction. There's this seam line in the door which is a bit unseemly, a bit ugly, but it's very necessary for the transformation, so that's forgivable. Moving the toy around, you can see some pinholes in the sides. Interestingly enough though, this pinhole in this side isn't done right, and even on the box, like let me get the box. You can see on the box over here, if I can focus on it, it shows that the pin is at the surface on this side, and it is at the surface on the actual toy. But if I rotate the toy around to the other side, you can see that the pin, where the pin went in, leaves a hole where you're supposed to insert a mirror. On the picture on the box, you can see that the mirror is inserted on that side, and they haven't been able to do it for the photo on both sides. So I think that is a kind of running manufacturing problem that they've just never managed to solve. In my hand here, you can see the two mirrors. These came on a little sprue, and you have to snip them off by hand. Then you can grab one of them and just poke it into the hole left where the pin is inserted on that side, and that's how it's supposed to look. I mean, it's not a big deal, I don't really care for it that much, but when you get to do the other side, it can't be inserted because the pin's in the way. I guess if you got something thin and just hammered that in a little bit, you could do it, but I definitely couldn't be bothered. The chances for damaging this paintwork over the see-through plastic here are pretty high. Mentioning paintwork, the whole figure, or almost whole figure, is painted, especially all these orange parts. There's a lot of see-through plastic used on the top, and the matching between the paint on the see-through plastic and the paint on the other sections, it seems pretty good. Judging by what I can see behind this wheel, I think it is actually an orange plastic with orange paint over the top of it, probably how they managed to match it so well. But surprisingly enough, on the top here, and it's not showing on camera, if I can rotate it to a different light, this is very mismatched, but as far as I can see on my view screen here, it's not even showing up on camera. In person, this orange and this orange, they're just worlds apart. And I think that this hood section here, no, it is painted. I can see a little bit of thickness in some places. It's all painted, there is just a mismatch, which is a little bit unfortunate because it does look somewhat ugly in person. On the underside, there's no car parts. It's all just Bumblebee squished up in there, and it looks just like pretty much every other Transformer. Same with these bigger guys, except they're just more blocky, so you don't notice it as much, I guess. This spare tyre holder comes with the figure, and as you can see at the back, there's not really anywhere to plug it, but that is where this little blank piece of plastic comes in. If you pull out that little nub, it leaves a slot which you can put the spare tyre cover onto. Now, I think they've included that because the original G1 Bumblebee had a little sticker of a spare tyre on the back. I don't like the way that looks. I don't know if the real version of this car actually had that, but I won't be putting this on display with that case on the back. I think it's just pretty ugly. To transform is kind of what you'd expect of a Bumblebee figure. You just fold the legs out like this. Now, I'm going to split them, but you can see the knee has kind of a reverse bend there. What you need to do is straighten that knee out, and it kind of it locks into the upright position. So his knee is double jointed, but it locks so that it holds its most attractive spot. Rotate the ankles. Fold the wheel to make the bottom of the foot, which kind of seems like how everyone does it these days. These panels will collapse in on themselves and they tab, so it makes a secure lock so that the foot doesn't kind of come undone while you're using it. That's basically the lower half of the body. The one tricky part that you've got to remember to do is fold this up like this and get this section into the slot like that. If you forget it now, it becomes a little bit difficult to do it later on, and you can see how it's stowed away in that cavity in there. Be cautious because the paint does rub as you put it in too many times, and I think you'll end up with a scratched paint job, but that is why I've got two of this figure after all. Now, next thing we want to do is just separate these arms from the back panel, rotate them out to the sides, down like that, put them at the side, that's where they're going to stay. It's pretty simple, it's just a matter of now getting those shoulders up where you want them to be. Flip out the hand, swing this little panel to the back of the forearm so that it's not so visible in robot mode. Same thing on the other side, rotate those arms around. So we're almost done. What do I want to do now? We want to fold this around like that, and before we collapse it in, we just want to bend this down. Now this thing here is a little bit flimsy and I'm worried about breaking it, so be cautious as you fold that in because you don't want to do any damage to that thin bumper bar there. That's about it. There is a tab on the inside. I don't know if you can see that going in, but it does tab it in. It's not super secure, but it tabs it in strong enough to hold it for the purposes that I've got anyway. Finally, the dramatic reveal. Whose allegiance? Autobot allegiance. What a surprise, considering it was already printed on the front of the car. I've got to say, this is a really good looking Bumblebee. Probably the Bumblebee we've always been waiting for. I'm going to turn him around a little bit there. He looks good from pretty much every angle. I mean, there's a little bit of his guts in there, but it's well hidden. Even from the back of the feet are surprisingly neat and tidy because of the way they've folded the doors around. Everything is just spot on, except for that colour. The colour still is bothering me. I don't know if it's going to bother you, but I'll bet you that eventually we get a different painted version of this where he isn't so orange, because the oranges are just a little bit annoying. Bumblebee comes with a little gun, which is great, because Bumblebee, even though he is not kind of warrior, he needs a gun. He gets into a lot of situations. Sometimes they leave guns out on Bumblebee toys, and that kind of annoys me. So I'm glad that in the Masterpiece version there is a gun given to him. He holds it nice and securely. It looks like from a distance those fingers are going to open. That looks like a pinhole in there. It is not a pinhole. This is a solid molded piece. Yeah, there's no way that's going to open, but maybe to keep it in line with the aesthetics of other Masterpiece cars, they've just put that pinhole in there for effect. You can see that his face is a little bit grim, like it's a downturned lips. He's not smiling, which is a bit out of character for Bumblebee. That's why they've included this extra face, but unfortunately my extra face has a paint blemish on the nose. Now luckily I've got another one, but I don't really want to open my other one, so maybe I'm going to have to take to his smiling face with a little bit of white paint. I had to carefully poke something under his chin to pry that off. Don't use the front of the car as leverage because you'll scratch the paint there. There's paint on the face and paint on the car, so it's a little bit tricky to do it without damage. You can see little peg holes in there that the smiley face will go into. And there's Bumblebee with his smiley face. Now, it isn't that smiley, and you know, the lines on the cheeks are a little bit less defined than the frowny face. I don't think that the smiley face has been done as good as it could have been, and because of that paint blemish, I'm going to be taking it off right away. If you remember back in alternators, there was some drawings going around of an alternator's Bumblebee, and you know, this guy differs a lot from that, and I had quite liked that alternator's Bumblebee design that was out there. And one thing I get when I look at this is that he is a weaker guy. He doesn't look bulked up, and from my memory, that alternator's Bumblebee was a bit more bulky. Someday I would like to see a kind of more badass version of Bumblebee, but this toy is not that. This is very true to the character, the small guy, and he looks just like he did on the cartoon. I mean, the face does look good, but it looks a little bit less chubby. I mean, it's hard to realize a 2D cartoon in a 3D form, and I guess it depends on what elements you want to emphasize in the design. So I'm quite happy with it. It's all in all pretty good. For comparison in robot mode, the first one I'm going to show is Bee, Toy World's Bee. Now, these guys do have somewhat a lot in common when it comes to the bottom part. Neither one of these were the first to come up with the idea of the doors wrapping around and the wheel at the bottom. I've seen drawings of that a long time ago, and they've both done their own thing with that. Comes off looking pretty similar. The Masterpiece, you can see less of the wheel under the foot. The Bee, you can definitely see the tyre poking down. I think I prefer the way the Masterpiece does it, making it not so obvious. They both have a gun. You can see both of their guns right there. I like the Masterpiece gun better. It's got a nice sparkly blue paint, and the Bee version, because of the transformation, tends to go a little bit wonky, but they are both pretty good. When it comes to the heads on these guys, though, I definitely feel the Masterpiece has a far superior head sculpt than Bee. I don't know why Toy World decided with Bee to try and make him look like Classics Bumblebee, but I was never fully sold on that. And if it wasn't for the fact of the Masterpiece coming, I probably would have bought a replacement head by now for Bee. On the back, Bee has a more condensing top of the car, whereas Masterpiece Bumblebee just leaves more of it hanging out there. But I do feel that the Masterpiece does it better by having the see-through plastic. Now, their paint job isn't 100% convincing over the plastic. In the grooves, I can see the darkness showing through of that dark see-through plastic. But it is a yellow paint. It's hard to do that. So I understand why Toy World decided to go for solid colors, because it means that instead of painting the whole piece, they can just paint the window on, which it looks a little bit neater when you hold it in person. I'm not sure if that's showing up on camera, but all these fine lines on the Masterpiece Bumblebee show a kind of darkness where the paint coverage isn't that crash hot. My next comparison is with Alternity Bumblebee. A lot of people hate Alternity Bumblebee. I quite like it. I was always a fan of this toy. I like the Cliff Jumper, or Cliff as they call him. I've got that one too, and I think that they're both fantastic toys. Their fatness in the chest doesn't bother me, but when it comes to who looks like Bumblebee, definitely Masterpiece Bumblebee looks a lot more like Bumblebee. I wish that his colour was more like this colour. This is how I like it, but again, the orange is what it is, and I'm going to have to start getting used to it, I guess. My next comparison is with this Action Master Bumblebee, one of my few G1 toys left. I don't know, I find it hard to let go of some of these, and I just have something I like about this Action Master Bumblebee, but I think he will be going in time as well. As I've said, I'm gradually just liquidating large portions of my collection, all of G1 and a lot of movie stuff. Looking at their faces, Masterpiece Bumblebee, a lot more like Bumblebee. The Action Master is really quite far from Bumblebee. They've gone with a kind of super deformed look, which wasn't really the case with most Action Masters, but with this Bumblebee they really pushed it that way, probably aiming to be a little bit cute. He does come with his helicopter backpack, which is also pretty cool. A good size comparison is with this original Classics Bumblebee. A lot of people seem to hate on Classics Bumblebee these days. Maybe it's because of these big panels on the forearms or the the huge boots, maybe just the head sculpt, but I always really loved this toy. I have so many copies of this toy. Back in the day when it was in the shops, I just bought it, and they're everywhere here now. Now, it's not unprecedented that we get an orange Bumblebee like this, and that's because I think it's from Hunt for the Decepticons line. I've got it somewhere. I couldn't find it for the video. There is an orange version of this Classics Bumblebee that is very similar in colour to the orange that we get here. So I doubt that Takara Tomy took their cues from that, but it has happened before. And final Bumblebee comparison here is with the video game Fall of Cybertron Bumblebee. So I like him too. I like Bumblebee. I just like him. I like the character. What can I say? I like the way his face looks with those grooves in his cheeks. I really like this toy. I got a bunch of this toy as well. I just bought a lot of him. And this guy, he gets a bit floppy after time. Another reason I picked up more than one of him. But a lot taller than Masterpiece Bumblebee. So by the time we get up to the modern era, Bumblebee is starting to be... he's just a regular kind of soldier dude. He's not such a small little scout as what his origins put him at. But how he gets from this big down to be a scout, because they're in the same kind of timeline in sequence, I don't know how he ends up being so small. That would be interesting for me to find out. To compare Bumblebee's size with the other Masterpiece cars in robot mode, we've got Sideswipe here. So you can see he's only up to the waist. It's a very tiny Bumblebee compared to those cars. I like it. I think that it's right, and they should have done that. I'm not angry in any way. I think that some people are a bit cross that the price is virtually the same and you get half a figure. I don't care. I've been waiting a long time for a cool Bumblebee, and what more could I ask for than have it at the correct scale in robot mode? I mean, it makes me happy. To compensate for that lack of figure, they did throw in the Exosuit, I think, Daniel. Now, this is a deeply flawed figure. You can see that the arm just popped off there. This happens constantly, and, you know, it's annoying, to be honest. I can't pose the figure hardly at all without the arms popping off, and it aggravates me a little bit. I didn't expect that much from it, so I'm not angry at the package as a whole. I just wish that they had maybe put some pins through those joints instead of balls. It does look pretty good. The face, if I can zoom in here, is really piss poor. I'm going to pull off the dome, and you can see he doesn't even have painted eyes. It's really not that good. The little figure that we get with Masterpiece Optimus Prime is considerably smaller than this figure, so this is like a giant version of Daniel. I don't think that's intentional. I think what that illustrates is that Masterpiece Optimus Prime has its own scale issues. Another thing that's a bit lackluster on this toy is that, come on, it's Masterpiece. Where's the feature? Why doesn't his arm transform into a gun? I mean, this is a movie figure. This is one molded piece. This should flip around and guns pop out. I don't know. They cheaped out a little bit on that. I get the feeling that this was more of an afterthought than an essential part of the toy. For comparisons, where's my Daniel? Here's an Impossible Toys Daniel, considerably shorter. Here is an Impossible Toys Spike, getting up there. Interestingly, these guys, Impossible Toys Daniel has a better head sculpt and better face than the Masterpiece. How can a company like Impossible Toys, who everybody bags so much, have a better face sculpt than the Masterpiece? I don't know, but look at it. It's side by side. Which one is better? It's easy to tell. I wish there was a way to pull off that Impossible Toys head and stick it inside the Masterpiece figure, because it definitely looks better to me. Let's try and transform this guy without it popping to pieces. Let's see. Fold the feet up like that. Flip the wheels around in a reversed fashion. Let's see, the wheels, first pop to pieces happening already. Fold those feet backwards in on themselves now. Condense the knee so that the legs can tab together up here in a straight line with the body. Open this chest panel and flip that right around 180 degrees on that elbow pivot. Oh, popped out again. Open the wheel, pop the ball joint back in. Open the other wheel, pop the annoying elbow joint back in. Now, this is going to kind of just fold back in on itself and peg in at the side. I'm being gentle because I'm getting sick of those elbows popping out. It's alright. Squeeze that. Now you can see that that arrangement of ball joints here was so that they could get it into that position. This doesn't really sit square. These little pivots here are not square. Don't try to make them be square because the figure just won't do it. There's some more little tabs. Push that in. You can pull off the front here and bend Daniel's face up like that so he can look forward as he scoots along. Quite painful position to be in, but that's about it. That's the vehicle mode. So it is at least a fully transformable exosuit. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing it too much. Those ball joints that continually pop off are going to get loose over time and make the figure useless in robot mode. So either buy two, one for each mode, or just keep it in robot mode is what I would say. It's just a pity that that CM's Corporation exosuit never became a reality, because that would have been blowing both of these versions out of the water. Wouldn't have been in any kind of scale, but it would have been awesome, that's for sure. My final thoughts are that this is a really good toy. It does bite a little bit, the price, if you think too much about it, because by the time you get it in your hand, it's probably like $70, $75. I bought two at once. I think it was a little bit of discount on postage. I think in my hand for the two of them, it was like $140. That's, you know, it is a small figure, but for how long we've wanted a Bumblebee figure, I think that it's not the first thing I think of when I remember buying this toy. It's the first thing I think of is how good it is, and maybe the money kind of fades in my memory over time. The thing that doesn't go away is the orange color. It's a shitty orange. It's not Bumblebee's color. I don't know why they've done that, and I kind of can't get over it. If they make another version with a proper coloring, I will buy that straight away. I'll grab another two. I mean, I love the character. I love this design. The mold is fantastic. The paint is a little bit thin in some places, but the overall tightness and execution, like the joints, he's got nice tight joints. He's got a good range of motion. You can see there his double jointed knee, universal joints at the hips. Like he can hit any pose that you want him to hit. He's a fantastic and fun toy. He doesn't feel like he's going to break in your hands. He's got a weapon. It's all around good figure except for that coloring. So I can recommend buying it. There's no guarantee it will ever be done again in that color. And given how much trouble it took to get a Bumblebee after all those years of not being allowed to do it, and then finally being bought by Tomy and their connections making it possible, I wouldn't gamble on there ever being another color, and I think you should probably snap it up now. It'll be a pleasant surprise if there is, and kind of I'll be the first one on top of it, but this is a good toy and you probably should just get it, because who knows when the next Masterpiece Bumblebee is going to come out. Will Hasbro ever do it? I've got no idea. I don't think they're going to have the same licensing problems as they do with Sideswipe, but then again, if Hasbro did this, going by the pricing of what we get in Australia, I mean, Masterpiece Prowl here is about $100. $100. I think it's better to just go with the Takara Tomy now and not wait to see what bullshit pricing Hasbro try to pull on us. So that's it. That's my video review for Masterpiece Bumblebee. I really like it. I'm Odeon. Thanks for watching.